Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to TechCrunch online learning course. I am Professor Amit Jadhav, going to teach you advanced web programming. Today is our second day. In last lecture, we have seen HTML and CSS. Today, we are going to see Ajax and ASP.NET. So let's start. So this is our agenda. In this, we are going to cover the topics. First, Ajax introduction, difference between synchronous and asynchronous, different applications of Ajax, then Ajax web application model, XML HTTP request object, and last one is the advantages or disadvantage of Ajax. This is for Ajax, and in ASP.NET we are going to see its introduction, difference between server side and client side technology, ASP.NET features, then file system that we use in ASP.NET, web forms, example, some server controls, basic server controls, and last one, examples. So let's begin with Ajax. So Ajax is nothing but the asynchronous JavaScript and XML. It is a combination of different technologies like XML, HTTP, and CSS. Mostly here we use the JavaScript for the Ajax application development. Ajax allows us to send and receive data without refreshing page. As we know that when the client machine wants to communicate with the server, at that time it sends the request to the server and server response for that request. So every time when client requests to the server, at that time it sends the data to the server and server responds with the processing data. So every time the page get refreshed and we lost that data. So Ajax, if we are using Ajax technology, the page never get refreshed, or the data which we want to update, that part only get refreshed. It is known as the partial refresh. So this is one of the advantage of Ajax. It never allowed to refresh the page. So it's improve website performance. There are different examples where we use Ajax. Nowadays, there are uh, number of nowadays everyone use the Ajax application in their website. For example, the common examples are Google Maps, Gmail, YouTube, and Facebook. Next one is here we see the example or we see the difference between Ajax without using Ajax technology and with using Ajax technology. So if we want to search anything on the Google using old browser, that without using Ajax technology, here we just type the text that we want to get information here. Here I type Sachin Tendulkar and click on search button. Whenever I click on search button, it redirects me on the another page and all the results get displayed. If we want to search again, I have to click on back button. I redirect to first page and again I type the text that I want to search. Again I redirect. So it's a time consuming process. Every time the every time page get reload. So in Ajax technology, simply I type the search content in a search text box and click on a search button. Then immediately the results get displayed on the same page. I don't need to redirect from one page to another page. And there is also a facility available that it suggests the things that I am going to search. So suppose I type only Sachin, then it immediately shows me the Sachin Tendulkar information or the suggestion. Next one is synchronous and asynchronous difference. So in old browser that the technology was synchronous, and in Ajax it's a asynchronous transfer. So let's see the difference between synchronous and asynchronous. Here it's a user, and it sends some request to the server by using browser. So when it sends the request to the server get that request. If the server wants to fetch the information, it connect to the database, fire the query, and get the response. And whatever the field or data get by the web server, it forwarded to the client and it updated on the server. So every time when client request, number of time client request to the server, at that time each time the request response by the server. So every time the page get refreshed and data may get lost. As we know that HTTP is a stateless protocol. It never maintain the state and never maintain the data. So data get lost. And it's a slow update because every time server get response. Every time our request go to server and it reply. In asynchronous, here is the case, asynchronous, that using Ajax web application model. When client send request to the web server, it does not go directly to the web server. It handled by the Ajax engine, and that engine communicates with the server. So every time the request goes to the Ajax engine, handle Ajax engine, it forwarded to the server, and whatever the reply get by the server, it forwarded to the browser or the client. So if server requires to get the data from database, it access the database, fire the query and get the response, and that response it forwarded to the client, and that response handled by the Ajax engine. So we can say that Ajax is the intermediate between the client and server. It handle each and every request of a client, forwarded to server, get response, forwarded to client. So here user can perform another operation. So number of time user send request to the server, it get immediately response. Partial page refresh, full page not get refreshed, so data not lost, and update it fast. Next one. Here we see how Ajax works. The JavaScript create XML HTTP request object. So this object used to send the data to the server and receive data from the server, forwarded to client machine. So object send and request behind the scene happen. It is user never comes to know when the data gets sent and when it receives to the client machine. But if we are not using Ajax, at that time the page get refreshed and user comes to know that server client sent request to the server. Next one, server response with the XML data. Here the majorly use the XML because XML is the lightweight, so it is easily updated. So here browser an event occur, create an XML HTTP request object, send it to send HTTP request. So whatever the request sent by the client, it will send by the HTTP request object that created by JavaScript, that created using JavaScript. Then server get the request, it process that request and create the response, and that response sent to browser. Whenever it sent to the browser, it handled by the Ajax engine, and that data sent in the form of XML, and we get the output on our screen. So this is the working of Ajax. So majorly here use JavaScript and XML only. Next point is application of Ajax. So these are the some common application where we use Ajax technology. First one that we already discussed, live search. Whenever user want to search anything, it visit to the Google website or any other search engine. It types its keyword and click on a search button, and we are using Ajax, so the immediately result display on a same machine. Next one is the autocomplete. In autocomplete, that suggestion is given whenever user try to search anything, that is nothing but the autocomplete. Third one is the chat application, and it is very popular thing in Ajax. Whenever suppose that we log into the Facebook website, and if we want to chat with our friends, so we open the chat window and type message to our friend. So whenever we type the message and click on the send button, at that time, never our website get refreshed. Only that part of chat window get refreshed. If if Facebook does not use Ajax technology there, then all the data that on our page sent to the server, and server reply with same data, only updated the chat window. So it's very time consuming. It increases the bandwidth. All this drawback if we are not using Ajax technology. So chat application very useful for Ajax technology. Next one is the shopping cart. In shopping cart, we are visiting shopping websites, and at that time we purchase the multiple product, and that we are inserted in a shopping cart. Whatever we purchase, whatever the product we purchase, that inserted in a shopping cart. So we can add the multiple product in a shopping cart same time. So this is one of the application of Ajax. Next one is the login and feedback. Previously, when we are using classical website, at that time when we enter our username and password in a login window and click on the button, if we fail to enter correct password, then it redirects us to new page, and where we find the error. Again we redirect to the login page. Again we enter the login id and password. So it's very hectic process. But if we are using Ajax technology, then when we enter, if we enter user id and password, and if we fail to enter correct password, it shows error on same page. No need to redirect here and there. So this is the one of the major advantage of using Ajax technology, that we get the error on the same page. Next one, very popular application, that is the Google Map. On Google Map, if we want to search any destination, we just type it, and immediately the we get the location on the same page. We do not need to redirect here and there. Again, on Google Map, we can enter the multiple destinations, and we redirect at the particular position. So this is by use of Ajax only. So these are some common applications. There are a number of applications are available. Just we discuss few one. Next one is the Ajax web application model. So here we compare the two models, that is classical model and Ajax model. So this is our web browser and this is the server. Web browser send request to the server. So the request is using HTTP request, using the method get or the post, and the web server reply us with the JavaScript, HTML and CSS data that will deploy on our web browser. This is the simple process to communicate with the client and server. Next one is the web browser and web server. Here we are using Ajax engine. So whatever the request sent by the web browser, that is in the form of JavaScript form. So here we use JavaScript, create an object and send the data to the Ajax engine. Ajax engine forwarded it to the web server, and the server responds the data that is in form of HTML and CSS that deploy on a web browser. So this is the, here we compare the web application model, that is the web application model using Ajax and without using Ajax. So the most important object that we use in a Ajax technology is XML HTTP request object. So this object is used to send data to the server and get response from the server. So it is used to exchange the data with a server behind the scene. Update the page without reload page, that we have already discussed, that using HTML using XML HTTP request, the page get update only that only which we required. Its syntax to create an XML HTTP request, that is for the advanced browser that we are currently using, for example Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer 7, Edge, Safari, Opera, etc. For that browser we create the object simple as it is, new XML HTTP request, and it we assign to the object variable. And if we are using, it's not a case, but if suppose we are using older browser like IE5, IE6, here we create the object using ActiveX object, ActiveX object, and we pass the Microsoft XML HTTP value, and it will create the object variable. It will receive data from the server after the page has loaded. When the page gets loaded, we get the response from the server, and using XML HTTP request we can send the data to the server. Next, important methods that use in a XML HTTP request object. So the first request is new XML HTTP request. This method is used to create an object of XML HTTP request. Next one is about, if we send any request and if we want to cancel that, we use abort method. Get all response header. Header is the thing which when the packet is created, at that time the data along with header sent to the server. So that header contain the information about the packet information, contain the packet information. So if we want to get all the headers that we request to do the server, we use get all response headers method. And if we want particular header, we use get response header method. Next and most important is open method. For open method, we require the parameters, method, URL, asynchronous, user, and password. In that, user and password are the optional. Only important parameters are method, URL, and asynchronous. Method, there are two methods are available: get and post. Using we can send the data to the server. So here we pass the method get or post, then we pass the URL. And asynchronous means we want to send the data from the background without knowing the user. By default it's false, we have to true that value, so we pass the value true here whenever we want to send the data. Asynchronous, both the values are there. If it is true, then asynchronously send the data. If it is false, then synchronously send the data. Here if the value is false, then page get request. So here we must write true. URL, the file location from which we have to get the get the data. So we pass that file name here in URL. Methods get and post, okay, that we have already discussed. Next one is send used to send the request to the server. It's applicable for the get method. And send in bracket string, here we pass the URL of the file. It is applicable for the post request. Next one, set request header, adds a label value pair to the header to be sent. So the header which we want to send to the server, we assign some value to it using set request header. Next one is XML HTTP request object properties. In last slide we have seen the methods. In this slide we are going to see the properties. So the first property is on ready state change. On ready state change means when we click on the button, the state get changed. That is preloaded before button click, and load after button click. So these are the two different states. And on ready state change we get that particular value. If the value is 0, that means the request is not initialized. if when the ready state value is 1, that means the server connection established. If the value is 2, then request receive. If value is 3, then it process the request, and if the value is 4, then the request finish. That means whatever the request we send to the server, we check its status using the value. Here we compare if ready state is equal to 0, then we come to know it's initialized. If it is 1, then we confirm that the connection is established. If it is 2, that is we request the receive receive data. Then if it is 3, then server process the data, and if it is 4, that means the request finish and response is ready, and after that we receive that response. Then response text, it returns the response data as a string, and that we display on our web browser. Next one is the response XML. If we want, if we get the data in XML format, we use response XML method or property. Status, it gives the status number. If it is 200, that means the process completed successfully. If it is 404, then it has a specific meaning, that is the it's not founded. If it is 403, it means it's a forbidden. Status text, if we don't understand the error with the number, then it display text also, that is status X, either it is okay, not found, like that. Next, next let's see an example. So here we are using Visual Studio 2010 because to run XML application we need a server, and as we know that Visual Studio is a C# programming is a server side programming language. So server is by default installed by the Microsoft. So here we open the website, Ajax program. First we run the program. It takes some time. Your patience would be appreciated. So we run the program. So here we get the output on screen. I place simple text XML HTTP request object, and here I create one button. When user click on button, it get the information from particular file that we have provided and put it on web page. Let's see. So this is the text that comes from the file that we have specified there. Let's see how it is. For that we write this program on Visual Studio 2010. So here we take simple h1 tag. In that h1 tag where we write the text. So here is the h1 tag. Is it visible to you? Okay. So here we use h1 tag, the XML HTTP request object. and create one button whose type is button, and on click we call the function load down, and here we write the text on the button, change content. Whenever user click on the button, the function get called. So the control directly comes here. Here we first create an object of XML HTTP request. Okay, here we check whether the state get changed or not. If it is changed, then function, this callback function get calls. Here it check whether the ready state is equal to 4 and status equal to 200. We check there. Whenever the process get finished, then the ready state value become 4 and its status is 200. The status 200 means it's completed. It's completed, right? And after that, here we open the Ajax info text file that we have created here. This is the Ajax info text. Whatever the text we have written here, that will display on a browser. So we open that file using open method. Get method, that for that we use here we pass as we have seen that open requires three parameters. First one is the method, second one is the URL, file URL, and third one is the asynchronous true or asynchronous false. So here we write the true. So three parameters we pass here, and that file gets opened and send it to the server. When it process and get response, and when it is finished, then its value become 4 and status is equal to 200. Whatever the data it comes, that are stored in response.text that we assign to the particular div. Here we pass the div ID that we given here. So the whatever data come will put here. We can check the ready state value also. So I do some modification here. So I write alert alert xhttp dot ready state, and we check it what the value we get. We run the application. So when we click on this, we get the ready state value 1. Click on OK. Then get the value 2, 3, and now the value get 4, and immediately the text display on the screen. So here we get the text. Again we go to the presentation. No. Let's see one more program in Ajax. Here I stop the program. Open the new program. So this is the program code. In that I take some images, chocolate, then ice cream and Manchurian. When user mouse over on image, immediately it display it's the text that I keep in chocolate.txt file. So this is I love chocolate. In ice cream text I write I love ice cream, and in Manchurian.txt, oh sorry, in Chinese.txt I write I love Manchurian. So this data will come on a page using XML HTTP request object. Okay. So here we design the page using design window. Hmm. So simply we use the text in H1 tag that we have already discussed in yesterday's lecture, and the XML HTTP request object. Then here we take the image. For that we use image tag. In SRC we specify the path chocolate.jpg. On mouse over, we call the function load data, and here we pass the two value. First one is the that file from where we fetch the data, and div1 where we want to display the text. So here I create that div with id div1 that I pass here. Okay, so whatever the content fetch will show in this div. Same for the second image. Src is equal to ice.jpg. On mouse over, I call the function, pass the two parameters, and NBSP used to keep some space between two HTML elements, and whatever the data page from the ice cream.txt will put here in this div. Same for the manchurian.jpg. On mouse over, I call the function load down, and here I pass the file chinese.txt, and here it is the div where the content will show. Here I create the div with id div id. You should take the care that whatever the id pass here we pass, it will be the same. So the same script that we run, load the data. Here we get the two parameters, data source and div id. Data source is nothing but the file name that we get here. For example, when we click on or when we mouse over the first image, we get here chalk.txt file, and its div id is div1. So here we create an object, and we check its state using on ready state changement, and we call that function. If ready state value is 4, then the response, whatever we get, that is in response.text, will put in a particular div. Here we use open method, pass the three parameters. Get data source. Get is the method. Data source is nothing but the file name that we receive, and true, the value of asynchronous is true. Send is used to send the data which we fetch from the particular file using method get. So let's see the output. So whenever I mouse over, then it will display the simply text, I love chocolate, I love ice cream, and here I get I love Manchurian. So this is one of the effects that we can use using Ajax. So let's go to our presentation again. Next point, advantages. Ajax is user friendly. We can simply use the functions or the properties that we get from the Ajax. It makes a web page faster, as the small amount of data goes to the server and response with small data server response with the small data, the web page fasterly or fastly executed. It's free from server technology. Here we use the client technology like JavaScript, CSS. So it's free from server technology. No need to purchase any server side scripting language or any technology. It's generally used for the form validation, that is known as the client side validation, that perform on client machine only. It will boost the performance of web pages. It's I told it already, because the data fastly load on the web pages, so its performance get improved. It supports the live data binding. uh, the Ajax engine bind data that comes with the server. So it supports the live data binding. It consumes very less resources from the server. JavaScript is used, so the processing is the same as for the all browser types. All browsers supports the JavaScript, so we do not need to use any new technology to execute the client-side scripting language. Ajax helps to develop faster and more interactive web application that actually we have already discussed. The page get fastly execute, not required to completely reload the page due to the server uses less bandwidth. So the data sent to the server is very less, so it use less bandwidth. Next point is disadvantages of Ajax. It increase the design and development time as we have implement new technology in our web page. So it takes some time for development and it increase the design code. If we want to develop the complex application, then Ajax code maybe get complex. It's a less secure because we are using client-side scripting language JavaScript, so it is less secure than server-side technology. Next one is the browser, which is disable JavaScript cannot use the application. That means in some browser there is a functionality to stop JavaScript code. If it is enabled, we can the Ajax technology will not work. So these are some disadvantage of Ajax. Let's start with the ASP.NET. In few lectures, in last lectures, we have seen client-side scripting language. Here we are going to see server-side technology, ASP.NET. First point is introduction. ASP.NET was introduced by Microsoft in 2002. The first version was introduced. It's a server-side technology. In this, we are using server-side programming languages like C#, then Visual Basic, JHash, like that. It is used to build the static and dynamic web pages. As we know that the website basically divided into two types. First one is the static and second one is the dynamic. In static, we can view the data. In dynamic, we can modify the data. So the modified pages we can view in dynamic web pages. Next one, so we can build static as well as dynamic websites. The ASP.NET application codes can be written in any of the following language: C#, Visual Basic, .NET, JavaScript, JHash. So in any languages, we can run the ASP.NET application using any programming languages. For that, there is no need to separate compiler or editor. We can run on a same editor. And for that, as it is the server technology, it required a server, and that we use is IIS. This is the Microsoft server. When we install the Windows, at that time, the IIS server get installed. Next point is server-side technology and client-side technology. So let's see the difference. JavaScript is a client-side scripting language, and C#, PHP, Java is a server-side programming language. So let's see the difference between client-side technology and server-side technology. So in client-side scripting, a technique is used in web development that involves using scripts that runs on the client machine browser. So whatever the code we write here, the browser or the client machine is responsible to execute that code. In server-side scripting, a technique used on web development that involves using script on the web server to produce responses that is customized for each client's request to the website. So in server-side scripting, the code is reside on a server. In client-side scripting, the code reside on a client machine. So whenever we are using server-side scripting, the code is reside on server, and server is responsible to execute that code. Server process that code and send it to the client. Executed in the client side or the web browser. So The client-side programming or client-side technology run on a client machine, and server-side technology run on the server. HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are used to create client-side scripting. Here, PHP, Python, Java, Ruby, and ASP.NET are used for server-side scripting. Does not provide much security for the data, as it is the client-side scripting language. It does not give any security, but uh, in server-side scripting, the server is responsible for this security, and it provides security to the data. Next one is some features of ASP.NET. First one is ASP.NET is a server technology that are using server programming language like C Sharp, Java, PHP. ASP.NET's pages are compiled and not interpreted. As it is a high-level programming language, it must be compiled and generate the source code. Separate code for HTML and server-side code. So designing part is different and coding part is different. Two different codes are generated. Heavily use of XML, as XML is a lightweighted. We heavily use that thing. It's a secure, as it is the server-side technology. It's secure, language independent. It supports the multiple language that we have already discussed, C Sharp, JHash, and so on. It supports the state management. This is the one of the important feature of ASP.NET, state management, that we are going to discuss in tomorrow, I think. So it supports the state management. That means HTTP is never maintain the state, but using ASP.NET, we can maintain the state and get the data. Run on any one environment. That means it will run on Microsoft as well as Linux, any environment, on any operating system it will run. So these are some features of ASP.NET. Let's move forward. The different file system that we are using in ASP.NET. First one, the ASPX. It's a web form that we have created. The file extension is .aspx. .asmx for the web services, that we can create the web service using ASP.NET, and its file extension is .asmx. .ascx, it's used to create the user control. There are different types of controls are available in ASP.NET. For example, server control, HTML control, data control, and one of the type is user control. We can create our own control using ASP.NET, and its extension is .ascx. Next one, web.config file. All the configurations are stored in a web.config file. Next one is the global.asx. All the global data is stored in a global.asx file. .vb or .cs, these are the code behind file. If we are create an application with Visual Basic, then its extension is .pb. If we are create the application with C# programming, then its extension is .cs. Then .resx, that is for the resource file, whatever the resources that we are using in a programming with extension .resx. Then .sln, it's a solution file. It will execute when we run the program. Then .skin is used for the themes that we are created. It's same like a CSS. Next one is .css for clients. CSS for creating a CSS, that is the style properties we have created, and save with the file extension .css. Next, .html. Here we create the HTML code. It's a designing part whose extension is .html, and .master. Whenever we create the master page using ASP.NET, its extension is .master. So web forms. It's a web form in a ASP.NET. that we are going to see live. This is the whenever we open a new website application. Here, this is the web form. Here, it's a menus, or we call it as a menu bar. It's a toolbox where the all the controls are present. Server controls, data controls, then Ajax controls. All the controls are present here only. This is in right side. We find the solution explorer. Whatever the files are created are show here. Then this is the property window where we find the properties of the controls. Suppose we create a text box, then all the text box related properties we find here. Then this is the error list box. Here the all the errors are shown. This is the designing web page. It's a main page where we put the controls, and here we design the web page. The web page can be split into design and source part. So in design, we design, here we find the designing source. The source code is automatically generated that display on a web page. So this is the web form. This is the source code that we have already discussed. Here we get the source code. Whatever the controls we use on for the designing, the code generated automatically. And this is the code behind. When we click on the button, the functionality we write here. Let's see a simple example how to create using ASP.NET. So to creating a new application, we click on a file, click new, and click website. Because we are developing ASP.NET website, we are using Visual Studio 2010. Here you find the different options that in which you want to design an application. If you want to do in Visual C Sharp, then choose Visual C Sharp there. If you are using Visual Basic, then choose Visual Basic here. So I choose Visual C Sharp. Here we choose the type of website. We choose empty website and give it name. For example, simple website or welcome website. So I'll write the website name. So the welcome folder will be created in this location. See Amit. Click on OK here. So the empty website create here. In Solution Explorer, right click here and click on Add New Item. Here we select different items are available here. We required web form. Its by default name is default.aspx. I keep it as it is. The place the code in the separate file is checked. That remain as it is. Select the master page. When we create the master page, we check this option. Be careful. Check the programming technology here. Visual C Sharp, web form, and default.aspx. Click on Add button. So the web page will be displayed on the screen. And here is the designing part. We can design code here. Here is the source part where the code is automatically generated. And this is the code behind where we write the functionality code. So this code is automatically generated. We just whenever the load event created, we write code for it. So let's see a simple example. Here the toolbox is present. We can drag and drop any control that we want. So let's see how it is. So I give it some space and I drag and drop one control here. For example, it's label. I drag and drop that control. All the properties I got here in a properties window, I can change here also, or I can go to source also. to modify the code. So I change it here only. Label I change with welcome to C Sharp. Welcome to C Sharp. The code is generated here. I have to I want to use some properties. Label one properties. Okay, here we have a font. We can set its font names. Okay, change its size larger. So number of fonts are available here. So you can use any font. We set its size with larger, and here we use color property or color property here. So here we set the color. We run the application. So here we get the output. Welcome to C Sharp. Okay, no share. So its source part is here. The code is automatically generated. No need to do anything. Just we drag and drop the control on a web page. On the web page, the code is automatically generated. Here we give some space, so and NBSP is generated. We drag and drop label, so its ID is automatically generated. By default, its ID is label one. Run at property that we use because it's a server application and we want to execute code on a server, so it's server property. Then font we use MS or tick. Font size we specify larger. For color that we mentioned the color, select I think red color. Its hexadecimal code is here, and text welcome to C Sharp. Like that we can drag and drop any control that we want to use. For example, if I want to use text box, I just drag and drop the text box and the code is automatically generated. If I want to use list box, I simply drag and drop list box. We can add the items. We add the some courses here. Click on OK, and here we find the list box. Same radio button we can use. Here we give the text, calendar control. Here it will come whenever we run the application. This is the image. We can set the image using its properties. In image URL, we specify the URL path. Right now, its image is not available. If whenever we specify the image name here, it will automatically display here. Number of controls that are available here that we can use. These controls are known as the server-side controls. Also, there are some data controls are available. Some validation control that we will discuss tomorrow. Navigation controls are there, and login controls. are available that we can directly use. Web parts are there. Ajax, for Ajax, the different controls are available. Dynamic data and HTML controls that also we can use same as it is. For example, if I want to use checkbox, I simply drag and drop it, and checkbox is available here. Okay. And the code is automatically generated here as we find it. Here we add the list box. The list box items are added with their option ITCS and BMS. Radio button is created. Calendar control is created here. We can create an image here. Checkbox control that we are used in a HTML server, HTML control that present here. If we run the application, click on OK. So here we get the output as it is. We are not arranged it properly. We find it anywhere. So this is the welcome text. Here is the list box that we can check. Here is the checkbox. We are not giving any text to it. We can select the date here using calendar control. So here June, July, and this is the checkbox control. We can check it. Let's move forward. So this is the code behind a simple program that we have given. So these are the some common controls that we have discussed right now. Label control is to display the text on it. Text box to get the user input. Its syntax is ASP text box. ASP colon text box. ID is equal to text box 1. Run at is equal to server. Here we close the text box as it is the pair tag. Here create the button ASP colon button ID is equal to button 1 run at equal to server. Run at property is used where we want to implies that where we want to run this code. Text, here we get the text. Drop down list, so we get the drop down list information. We can add the number of items. It's also called it as a combo box where we get the multiple items and select only one. Best example is the country. When we click on it, the country list is displayed. We select our country, that is India. For that we use drop down list box to choose the multiple option, checkbox to choose multiple options from the given list. Radio button is used to, and the syntax is same. ASP colon radio button, ASP colon checkbox, ASP colon label, ASP colon text box. Only ID is different, and it should be different. And the run at is equal to server. To create an image, ASP image ID, run at equal to server, and calendar. Here we get the code. Some common properties of controls. So access key is used to set the keyboard shortcut for the label. So how we access the control using shortcut key. Here we specify tab index. So which control we access first, which control we want to access next. For that we use tab index. Back color for background color. Border color to set the border color. Border width, it used to set the border width. Font to set a font with their size. Core color for the giving text color. Then text property is used to display the text on the control. Tooltip is used to display some text that used to understand the user. Next one is visible. If visible property is true, then we can view that control. If the visible property is false, then control we cannot view. Then height and width, we can set the height and width of control. ID is the unique property name, and one thing is remain run at property. Its value is server. So now we are going to see a simple login form example. So here we navigate. So this is the code. We open the login code. We are designing only. Choose ASP login. Click on open. So this is the code. This is the design page. It arrange it properly. Last example, we keep it anywhere where we find, but here we design it properly. I would like to suggest to for designing use the source code so we can design it properly. So in this example, this is the HTML part. HTML code starts from here. So we give the login form as a title. Here we start with the body form is there, and here we use the table to arrange the data properly. In table we use in first row there are two columns. In first we use the label, and in second we use the text box. So here we pass the label name, and here we pass the text box. Same for the second row. Here we pass the two column in TD. First one in first it is the password, and in second it's the text box code. In third TR, in third we want to display one button only that we pass. Here we write the TD because in everywhere we use two columns, and here we want to use only one column. So we add one more column, or otherwise we use call span for this. Call span equal to 2. We design this page and we run it. Here we get the output login page in web format. We can set its border also. So additionally you can do it. Click on submit menu. So last program we are going to see that we are designing registration form. Not open, sorry. Student registration form. So it we design using the control same as a table format, using table control. Username, email ID, password, confirm password, male, female, and select codes drop down box and register. Which source code is here. Here we start with the table. We use border equal to 1 because we want to display the border for the controls. Here we want to first display the student registration form. So here we write the call span is equal to 2 because it takes the space of two columns. So I write here call span is equal to that we have discussed yesterday only. In TD tag, in next row, we use label with their properties. Text properties is used to display the text on a control. Run at property that we know, and ID. It's a unique ID for the control. These properties are important. Next, we use the text box with ID, run a property, and required true. Required is equal to true property for the text box. We create the label email. ID is equal to ID we provided, and run at is equal to server. Then we create label and text box same up to end. Here we create label with the gender, and here we use two radio buttons, first one for the male and second one for server. The group name should be same, otherwise it can select multiple radio button. So to avoid that, specify the group name. Group name should be same for the both the radio button. ID property is same, run at value is same. Next one is the label and course is text box. Here we use drop down ASB drop down list. ID is equal to drop down list 1, run at server. And here we add the item, list item, IT, CS and BMS. Drop down we close. After that we use button to submit the data. ASP button ID is equal to button one run at server. Text is equal to register. And here we apply some CSS. CSS class is equal to button primary. So here, this is the code, and we run the application. Here we get the output: username, email ID, password, confirm password, gender. If we change the table's border property to 0, I think it's better. Save the code by pressing Ctrl S, or you can save it here also. Click and save all. Run the application. Click on OK. So here we get the output without using border. Okay, let's go to our slide. So from example, okay. Thank you for watching. If you want, if you have any doubts, feel free to contact amitcmits@gmail.com. Thank you very much.